So I just signed up for a casting agency, and luckily in Boston we have a few casting agencies in the city. And I signed up for one, and literally within 2 or 3 weeks, Marcus, I was literally standing on set next to Zendaya. It was crazy.
Today we have the honor of hosting Damian Parker, who is an actor. It's so great to get to know you, Damian, man, over the years. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us. Real pleasure and honor, man, for you to come on and educate the masses about what you do.
No, again, well, thank you for the kind words. But also at the same time, thank you for just the opportunity to come and speak to you and thinking that I'm dope enough to talk about this stuff.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely, man. So, what inspired you first to get into acting?
oh man, how much time do we have? That's like a loaded question. I think when you're a kid and you're watching like a lot of these like big budget stuff, especially at like kind of like when we were growing up, and you're watching like all the superhero movies, all the Star Wars movies, and just being like, wow, I like that seems really cool. How do you do that? I guess my first start was like I was the kind of like loser who would like get the 2 disc DVDs where like the first disc was the movie, but the second disc was the special features, and I would watch like all the Lord of the Rings and Star Wars behind the scenes special features. And I would just watch those like on repeat and just trying to see like how they crafted this image, how do they crafted the shot, like makeup and all that awesome stuff. And honestly, I gotta give you credit, like to your wife, honestly, because during high school, Stephanie would always just be like, "Are you doing drama class? Are you doing drama class?" And I was just like, "No, dude, I'm from Delaware. What do you mean drama class? I'm too cool for this." You know what I mean? It was just never like in my mind to do it. And Stephanie was always just you should do it. You should do it. You should do it. And I'm just like, nah. So I never, ever did something related to acting until my senior year at the University of Delaware. So at that point, I was 22, and I took an acting class. And we got a play, and we got 10 pages of text, and it was just you and a scene partner doing 10 pages of text, and it was like our semester project. And I just remember like at the time I started seeing my now fiance, and I would just run lines with her. And when we would do workshops in class, it was like, I don't know, like something just like really hit. Something just really was just like, this is really, really fun. And then again, kind of going back to Stephanie's like push in high school, after like I got an A in the class, it was really awesome. I just dropped it. Like I didn't go back to acting again. But what I vividly remember was after we did our scene in front of like 25 people. I've never done anything like that before. The professor actually pulls me aside and he goes, "Are you sure you've never acted before?" And I was like, "I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, I'm from Delaware." I was trying to like get a tennis scholarship. I was like, this theatrics, art was never like in my forte. And he goes, "I really do think you should try and go to graduate school for acting." And I was like, "What? Like me?" It was one of those things I held on to like in the back of my head, and then I never went back to it. So I ended up moving to Jersey, living with my fiance's family as like broke college kids trying to save money. But I got like access to like New York City, and then I started going to Broadway shows. And I was like, I just keep getting these little hints in life about like all of like art and acting and stuff. And I thought this seems really interesting. So I didn't truly get started until I moved to Boston. And I took like a 6 month sabbatical from work, but I also needed to pay the bills because Boston ain't cheap. So I was like, what's something that I could do to kind of dive into this now that I'm 27 at this point, and I wanted to like try and do something just to see what it's like to actually be on those second DVDs, those special feature DVDs as a kid. So I just signed up for a casting agency, and luckily in Boston we have a few casting agencies in the city. And I signed up for one, and literally within 2 or 3 weeks, Marcus, I was literally standing on set next to Zendaya. It was crazy.
Wow. So that was your first opportunity? Is that just like before any formal training or acting classes, you just kind of dove in it and tried the casting?
Yeah, it was
Uh,
really just extras. So like it was the movie Challengers. You need that the I don't know if you've seen it yet, but like I'm in
yeah.
that movie about 20 times. I'm being conservative, 20 times. And I don't and then me and my fiance counted how many times I was in it. But the thing is, it's really funny because like it's extras work, right? So a lot of times just based off your look and what they're looking for, and depending on the size of like how many extras they need, you are literally just like it could be anyone. Like it's a pretty diverse group of people that they're looking for. They want people of all kind of walks of life. And so I managed to get on to a the set. I was there. It was supposed to be like a 6-day shoot. I was there for 3 weeks. Um, I basically spoke to like the director very briefly. I spoke to the two actors of the two tennis players. I didn't get a chance to meet Zendaya, but she did sit next to me for like an hour once, and I was like, "What is happening? Like, this is crazy. Like, I moved to Boston, and this is what I'm doing within several weeks of moving there." Um, but it wasn't just like that. It was just like I'm sitting back at one point, and it's like the second week of the shoot, and the director, I'm gonna butcher his name. He's Italian, Luca Guadagnino, who he has the monitors up, and I'm placed like sitting next to him, so I'm not in the shot. But he's organizing how the shot's supposed to look and does like a rehearsal shot. And the rehearsal shot, Marcus, was like really, really awesome. I was like, wow, this is like watching live art. And then he just goes, stop, cut, and just gets up with like his megaphone and just starts like pointing and directing the actors what to do. And a lot of us are just like, that looked really good. Like, man, like what does he see? What am I not seeing right now? And then sits back in the chair and just goes, action. And then the shot, because we can see the monitors, I look around all the other like extras and actors that are behind us. We're all just like this, like that shot was like 3 times better. And that's when that was part of the thing where it's not just like acting. It's kind of like when you get to be on a set and you're all working as this organism. The set is like an organism. Everyone has different parts that you're working on that you need to foster collaboration in order to get the shot to work, or even like a scene in theater to work.
Wow. Yeah, that actually leads me into my next question. I was going to ask, what does a set look like? Your average set. I mean, obviously it's subjective depending on what you're working on, the project, obviously, but how long are you there typically for an average project, and what does it feel like to be on set?
That is super, super subjective based off of like whether you're on a commercial set, how long the shoot is for. Could be if you're on like a theater set, which I've done in like local theater in Boston, or whether it's like you're just doing like extras or but like you're kind of casted to not be like your name is not going to be in like the credits, but you're kind of like a glorified extra. I've been on sets for like 4 or 5 hours, and I get paid for the whole day because a lot of times if you work with an agency, they're the ones that kind of do the contracts for you. Um, I've also been on sets like in Challengers and like a couple of other commercials I've shot where I'm on set for like 14, 15 hours. Like they're pretty, I have done like a 15, 16-hour day. So they can be very, very brutal if you're not used to it. And also like if you are, if you're expecting like a 9 to 5 in this industry, don't, because you don't really know if you got the role. Sometimes I don't know if I got like a book something like 3 days before, and I'm like, I gotta like find a way to just reschedule my whole week. And also like the days on set, the days that that like you're really feeling it out are like when everyone's kind of on the same page and they're like, this is going to be a 12-hour day, and we're like, we're going to get this done in 10 or 11, just watch us. But some days, I could be on set for 16 hours. I can go on set at 5 a.m. and not leave till like 10 p.m.
Wow. Wow. So take me back. So, you finish your first opportunity, you kind of just jump in. Afterwards, to get more opportunities after your very first opportunity, did you take any acting classes to, make yourself a little bit better? And then, how did you do that? And do you feel like that prepared you for, the roles that you got afterwards?
Yeah, great question. Because acting is such a weird subjective thing, and there's people that like take classes and like keep it like just with classes, or like go to drama school. So it's there's a whole deep dive into that. But for me personally, I didn't really know where to start, and so I was just really interested in kind of like comedy, and just not necessarily like the art of being funny or anything like that, but just kind of like how do people just are able just to kind of think on their feet and do stuff. So I signed up for an improv class at a great school here in Boston. Shout out to Improv Asylum. And I took one of their classes, like their introductory course. It was like a 7-week improv course, and it was like one of the best times I had in my life. And just kind of like getting on your feet and kind of not being scared, because in improv they have this thing called yes and, where if someone says something, you can't just go no no no, you have to accept it and then try to build off of it. And as soon as you start to like reject stuff, the scene doesn't work, right? And so I did that, and then I started to do community theater in Boston. And Boston has a fantastic community theater scene. My first audition actually that I ever did for theater was I just at a small community theater in like a church basement at a production company. Again, community theater is they're called Theater at First. They're out in Somerville, just about 30 minutes north of here. Yeah, I auditioned for a Shakespeare play and I was like, what am I doing to myself? And yeah, I just like I went to the library, got the text and just analyzed and just kind of get an idea of like what, what's the story about? Who am I shooting for? It was an open audition. And so when I went and auditioned, I managed to snag a role. Malcolm, who's the prince, who's the one that like leads the war effort at the end. And yeah, that was kind of like my acting class. It was like, okay, I'm doing theater, I'm doing the makeup, I'm doing the costuming, I'm doing the tech, I'm doing tech week, I'm just doing all of it, right? And that was kind of like my theater itch. I was like, oh, this is why people like do theater. And so I also like after that started doing more theater around the city. I've done 2 theater productions and a bunch of other commercials, but the other thing that I try to do was I try to just see if I can get into graduate school. So I applied to Yale School of Drama. I did not get in, but I got top 50. And I applied to 2 drama schools in the UK. Those 2 I got into. So it's just been kind of like taking classes every now and then, but also like getting just like my feet wet in different experiences throughout Boston.
Nice, nice. And the improv, in particular, do you feel like that made you a better actor overall? And obviously kind of getting into the drama school that you're getting into, all that kind of leads up to tools to make you a better actor, necessarily. But do you feel like some people can just jump straight into it like you did, with your first opportunity?
Um, I will say this, that I am really lucky and privileged that I get to live in like a big city where those opportunities are open to me, where I can go take an acting class or I can go take an improv class or I can try and do theater. So that is something that I recognize, and I am very lucky and blessed to be able to live here in Boston to do. But improv kind of forces you to jump in. Like, what's the point of paying for a class if you're not going to like throw yourself in there, right? And so I am naturally a person. It's hard for me to answer the first part of your question because naturally for me, I'm just kind of like sink or swim. Hopefully you don't sink. You know what I'm saying? Like try to just tread water. And so to throw myself in there, I would say if people are looking to like try something that isn't like, you're not going to just try and go to buds. You know what I'm saying? You can't just go and become a Navy SEAL. You got to like, acting is kind of safe enough where you can try and go to an audition. You can try and sign up for a class. And I guess my piece of advice would kind of just be like making sure that you are engaging with it and you're just having fun. Because as soon as you start to like not have fun, and I've witnessed that with people, like as soon as you stop having fun with it, you're kind of missing the point of why we're all there. So you have to like those 2 things, like having fun with it, but also be willing to jump in and make mistakes. It's totally okay. Especially when you're doing like a theater production or commercial shoot, like sometimes the director's gonna go like, nah, no, we'll mix it up this way. Just being kind of malleable and just having
Right.
fun with it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, no, please go ahead.
No, that's interesting you say that. That actually that leads me to my next question. What were those first few roles like that you took upon, and were there any awkward moments, mistakes that you personally had, or how did you overcome that?
Yeah. I think the funny thing is that I don't necessarily think it was like I don't really take at the time I probably did this, but I don't really take them in as negative. They're all like learning experiences. They're all opportunities to try and just absorb as much information as I could because I wasn't coming from this from a conservatory standpoint. I didn't go to drama school. I didn't get my BA in acting or in theater or in theater studies. I literally took 2 theater classes and one of them was an acting class in college. And now I'm just kind of here in some ways like caught with my pants down. Like I don't know what I'm doing here. There's multiple moments where I'm working on something and I'm like, you're always gonna have like a little bit of an imposter syndrome, right? So I always found that to beat that would just be to just take in as much information as you can. And it can be from little stuff, from hitting your marks to where's the camera being set up for this so I can go, maybe I can try this. Or when the director goes, be willing to kind of experiment with this. It's really just like absorbing as much information as you can. That's like how I went about it. But again, I'm also the type of person that is either sink or swim. I'm just going to jump right into it. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, please tell me how to, make a scene or make something better. I hope that kind of answered your question. I know that was kind of like
Yeah,
a long
no,
answer.
definitely does. I'd say like, in addition to that, I mean, how long do you think it takes the typical actor to maybe? I mean, you have the the sink or swim mentality and kind of a little bit better in regards to that. But how long do you think it takes a typical actor to gain their confidence, to understand, not only from the audition, but to be on set and to be confident in their abilities?
I think that's a really hard question to answer because either way, I'm saying like I was sink or swim. I don't think it does take a while. When you go onto a set, every set for the most part kind of looks different. You know what I mean? And then, how do you navigate a set with like hundreds of extras? How do you navigate a set where it's just like you and five people? How do you navigate a set where there's multiple cameras? How do you navigate a set when there's one camera? There's just a lot of different things that I don't really know if there's an answer. I think the only answer is to get the reps. I think that's it. Like it's such a rep game. It's very hard. First of all, it's very hard to book something. It's even like, a lot of times the work, in acting, they say like the work in the industry is just getting the job. It's not really getting onto set. The score, the ecstasy is kind of like when you get that email or that phone call and you're like, you book something, you're like, yes, you know what I mean? And so that's like in some way, I don't know if it's toxic or not, but that's like what keeps me going is when knowing when you book something, you're like, yeah, I got it. But then you have to learn that stuff on set, and you can't really learn a lot of that stuff if you've never been to like school for it unless you book those roles and get onto a set or a stage. So that is like a really loaded question because you don't really get that experience of like learning a set in acting per se unless you book it. But if you happen to be working on a set in other roles, grip, camera operator, lighting, like there, you can also watch actors on set and see their process, which you're not necessarily doing it yourself. But I've met people who would be like, yeah, you just do lighting. And then I started acting in local theater. Then I got booked this commercial and I just kept acting. Like there's a lot of stories like that. It's such a fluid industry that there's no like, I went to college, I went to law school, and now I'm a lawyer. It's not really as like, there's a pathway. Yeah.
Right. Awesome, man. No, so that's interesting. I mean, working behind the camera, maybe to get that experience too. That's a different take and look on it. So getting discovered after your first opportunity, maybe your second opportunity. How what's the process in that? I mean, did you want to get an agent for yourself? And if you got an agent, how's that process?
Yeah, I don't want to take away from anybody else's experience. That is not what I'm here to do. But from my experience of working with other actors and quite the few that I've been lucky to work with, most people don't get discovered like I was walking on Venice Beach and someone signed me up to be a model. Like that just does not. It doesn't. It's rare. It's rare. That didn't happen to me. I thought it would have been awesome if someone was just like, "Hey, I saw you walking in New York City and at a donut shop or getting a bacon, egg, and cheese," and like that does not happen. So like I what I basically did was I got a theater credit and I was doing like a big resource that I used was I read that I was like, okay, how do I get like a reel? Doesn't need to be perfect, but it just needs to be a little something that I can show people that like I can be in front of a camera and like I can kind of like read lines and like say them, right? That was all I was looking for. So a big resource that I use was Backstage. Backstage kind of has like a free account. It's basically like an acting hub where people can post all the different projects they're working on. And if they need like a lighting assistant, a director, a producer, a writer, or an actor, they just, they basically like post all of it and you can apply for stuff. Most of the work on Backstage, there's a difference between non-union and union. Union is like, if you're a union person, like SAG-AFTRA, which is like the Screen Actors Guild, like there's a lot of stipulations and rules that you have to kind of abide by, but also like when you ever get like we call it like your SAG card, you could also be auditioning from like anyone who's like so low on the totem pole like me to like Denzel Washington. You know what I'm saying? That's all who's SAG. You know what I'm saying? Not that Denzel Washington auditions for anything. That's not. But you get what I'm saying.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, so like a lot of it was just non-union stuff. Like I would too. Like I think I filmed like a tennis like test shoot for someone so they could like put their services out to like Nike because they were doing like commercials for some of their sponsored athletes and they wanted to direct it. So they did a test shoot for that. I did a couple short films. Again, super lucky and blessed that I live in Boston because we have BU Film School and Emerson Film School. So like the students need like student actors. So I just did a couple of those, just like bouncing around, which was awesome and great experience. Again, getting on set, booking the role, kind of going back to that. That's kind of how I learned my ropes. So backstage was an incredible tool for me, like the first year and a half. And my first two theater opportunities, I believe, yeah, were through backstage. You know, there was a theater opportunity. I applied for it. They said come in and audition. Um, it's decently verified, so it's not like creeps are posting stuff and like you're auditioning in like a back alleyway or anything. No, no, no. But again, you can kind of like filter that information to kind of know like, is this reputable? Is this safe? You know, and again, I'm lucky to live in a place where we have film schools and community theater and a really strong community theater scene. The Footlight Club in Jamaica Plain, I believe, is the first community theater in, I think, the United States, but definitely in Boston. So I have that like kind of network, which has been really, really awesome. But again, backstage, super useful tool for me to kind of enter into the game.
Nice. So I'm bouncing around a little, but going back to putting you on set, right? Like you get your role, and you're getting ready to undertake this character or whatever it is that you may be doing at the time. How hard is it for you to memorize lines? How hard and how much preparation would you say for you goes into a role?
I think the main part of my experience so far is when I memorize lines, I have gotten really great opportunities through theater where theater is one take. You know what I mean? You get one take to be on a stage and that's all you got. You know? So to memorize lines, I would say that for me it's a little bit easier because of my experience auditioning for drama schools, doing Shakespeare and also doing theater. Where like at some, you get the little theater books, then you're reading the plays. Like sometimes I'm like, I have 75% of this page just for myself. How am I gonna do that? And that could take weeks just for that one monologue. You know what I'm saying? So for me, memorizing lines came from that theater kind of just background, just like not that I have a long background, but just getting the opportunity, like once I have a monologue or something, like digging into it. Once I have an opportunity to get on stage in front of people, getting into, you can also just like go into classes and like when the teacher or professor's like, here's a monologue, you know what I'm saying? And just kind of like, again, it's a rep thing. They say acting is a muscle, it hits different parts of your brain, right? At least that's what I think they say. But like it is kind of a muscle. If you stop kind of doing it, you kind of lose it. So transitioning that into like when I have like a film, TV, or commercial audition, and they're like, oh, be able to memorize. It says like in the audition line, like be able to memorize so many lines. It has like 3 pages, and it's like it's not really like it's bracketed off of different characters. I'm like, okay, I think I can probably do this in one night, film it, and send it in. And I can't say that if it wasn't for my theater experience.
Interesting. Interesting. In addition to that, I mean, how do you get over I mean, this is off, everything I'm saying is obviously subjective, especially, when it comes to this role, but, did you have any stage fright starting off or like, how did you get over, the cameras are rolling, you're on, especially on the theater, you have a booked out theater. How do you get over that stage fright? Is it immediate just once you start getting into the role, or do you feel something in your gut the entire time that you're filming or on stage?
Great question. The first time I ever got on stage in my little community theater show, there was about 30, 40 people there, if I remember correctly. And we had to like have the costumes on and do the makeup and stuff. And I think I sweated through my entire makeup. Like I was so nervous. Like I remember taking the like my military costume off at the end of the show, and I was like, it looked like I was cutting for a UFC fight. It was absolutely ridiculous. I was just completely drenched. And I remember the day before, like I was working at a previous job at a nonprofit, and I was like kind of in the job, like memorizing my lines. And I was like, I'm feeling really good. The next day, when we're about to like open, I was like, I'm literally gonna crap myself. I'm so nervous. Like, couldn't eat, couldn't do anything, couldn't. And honestly, if I went back and did a show now, I'd probably feel the same way. And it's such a nerve wracking experience where I don't think most people can just go out there and just be like, got it, we're good. Like, no, because you not only do you want to do well, but at the same time you get one take. You know what I'm saying? And that's where the reps come in, and like all the practice and the tech and the rehearsals. Like, it's a nerve wracking experience, and I'm only speaking for myself and maybe a couple other people that I've also worked with in theater, where I'm like, are you nervous? Yeah. I'm nervous. Yeah. Like, we're all just kind of like commiserating because we're all nervous together. But there's also like a beauty in, no matter how big the theater is or how intimate and small the theater is, there is a beauty in just like the thrill of like, oh man, someone can mess up tonight, but we're not going to because we worked on it. You know what I'm saying? There's like this weird. I remember I did a black box show where there's like maybe 30 or 40 seats in there, and it was basically the entire. It was like a 100-page script, and it was one take. Like, there was no moving in and out of like going backstage and changing your costume. No, we were on stage from page like 1 to 100, and then the last few pages was something else. Yeah, it was hard. It was hard to block. It was hard to do, but it was like thrilling. It was so thrilling to do something like, oh, this is scary. Theater is like probably one of the scariest things I've ever done. And I know that sounds really like people do so much more scary stuff, but like it's a weird beast because you're also like kind of putting yourself out there. Either way, it's not yourself. You're trying to play a character. Yeah, that's where improv kind of helps, because when you have, page 1 to 100 and you're just doing a long play, that's where improv kind of came into play. And I can be like, someone forgot their line, and they kind of give you like they're talking and they go like this. They go, and I go, okay, in my head, you forgot your line. Great. I'm going to start here. And then we can just go. It's a really, I can't really, sometimes it's hard to explain without me talking too much, and, or like having, like, you have to experience it to kind of get an idea of it, because it can be super, super stressful and super fun.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. You're really relying on your team at that point. You're out there and just kind of bouncing off of each other, and that preparation that went into it. So now that you are, have a little bit more experience in the game, and going back to when you first started, like thinking about becoming an actor, do you feel like, looking back your career is different than what you expected now, or is it pretty much going on par to what you expected?
I probably would have gone to like the UK and gone to drama school. And I did like get into two really great drama schools in the UK 2 years ago, but I ended up not going. So it's a really interesting question, because there's a lot of there's such a the acting industry, again, it's not like you go to get your BA, you go and get your JD, and you go become a lawyer, right? There's so many kind of different avenues. And just because you're not like constantly on TV or always doing like movies like Tom Cruise, like that doesn't mean that you're not a successful actor, because like most people don't get to those levels. It's like this amount of people out of this big wide group of people that are trying to do it ever achieve, Tom Cruise, Idris Elba, Zendaya levels of success. That's just not, like, most people are kind of just doing it in LA or in New York or in like London or in other big cities around the world. And they might not necessarily get noticed. Like, they still might be part of agencies. They might have like 50,000 or 100,000 Instagram followers, but they're not Selena Gomez with 600 million followers. You know what I mean? So like, it's the idea of success is so different for everyone externally, like, but because I can't speak for what people want internally, but at the same time, it's like, for me, I'm satisfied with it because I got to experience things I never got to do, but I'm still hungry to do more because I enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's been your favorite part of, your experience so far, and what's been your least favorite?
I really, really loved some of the people that I've gotten to meet and work with. I got to do a play. It was written by David Rabe, and it was called Sticks and Bones. We did it here in the South End in Boston in like a 100-seat theater. And a couple of the shows, almost every seat was packed. That set, it was directed by Chris Cavalier, who lives here in Boston. Absolutely amazing experience. Like working on that theater project where it was like, it was written in the 70s and it's a story based on like the Vietnam War, right? And coming home. And it's really like to be a part of like a play that is like, and also this play was like super misogynistic, super racist, and it was super edgy. You know what I mean? And so like to see the responses while you're doing the show, and then people were coming into the show and being like afterwards coming to you and being like, "Wow, great job! Like that story was amazing." And I was like, "Really?" Because there's some questionable stuff in there, but it was that was probably in terms of like you know theater experiences, and I did that kind of like right after I did Macbeth, which was a community theater show. But this one was like on like a stage in the South End here in Boston, and that show, that's something that's I'm going to carry forever. It was such an amazing experience. The things I really don't enjoy is when you apply to a job, right, and like the job just never gets back to you. Imagine doing that 700 times. You know what I mean? Like you're just auditioning and auditioning in person on the camera, and you just don't hear anything. At first, it was really a struggle. It was really a struggle because you kind of get into the mindset of like, what am I doing wrong? Crap! Like, am I ugly? Did I not do something? But I started to learn that like you cannot control what a casting director thinks about you. You can't control, you know, there's sometimes like you don't. I don't know if the casting director got into an argument with like their husband, and the husband looks like me. I don't know. And as soon as I walk in, they're like, no, no, no. Like, I don't know. I don't know if they do that. I don't know if they do. There's so many factors in it that you can't control. But I just learned do the best work that you can, send it in or perform it. And then, hopefully something works out of it. So
How do you mentally handle rejection? I mean, there's roles that you have that you're super excited about, and you're like, hey, this is for me.
great question. Great question. When I first started, it was really a struggle. It was really a struggle because I don't know if it was a timing thing, but there was a lot of really great projects with a lot of like big companies and like really cool things that I would be able to do. For the most part, I didn't get any of them. And that was like really frustrating because I was like, oh man, like what else do I have to do? What has to like set me up like separate from everyone else? But at the same time, I just kind of kept getting back to, and I did this really great Shakespeare seminar in New York City last Thanksgiving, the University of Bristol in the UK, and absolutely fantastic experience. And I was just talking with some of the actors that have like done other stuff before, talk about going into like a theater and like how to audition, and like again going back to like sometimes you just can't control what happens, but just do the best work that you can, and always just kind of come prepared. They say this is the monologue I have for you. Don't do another monologue. Do that one, and just sink your teeth into it and have fun. As soon as the audition's over, I walk out and I look for a trash can. I just crumble it up, move on with my life. And because I know that like, okay, in order for me to get to that point, I have to sink my teeth into what they gave me, do the work, show up and perform, and then get it out of your brain. And that's my way of just kind of like getting out of my head. Crumple it up, throw it away. I usually never think about it again. And then it's kind of nice when you get an email saying, hey, you got a callback, or hey, you booked it. And you go, I forgot that I did that. It kind of like, it just makes it, you're like, oh, this is great. So that's kind of the steps that I took to just be like, focus on just doing the work.
Interesting. Transitioning a little bit to the subject of money. And again, everything that I've talked about so far is subjective, right? But how much does a role pay? I guess starting with maybe, the theater versus, a commercial. The point of the question is, when someone is starting off, how much can they expect to potentially make, at the very beginning stages?
Yeah. So not much. Not much at all. And I'm going to kind of start from the bottom and kind of build up. So if you're starting off doing like community theater, it is community theater. It is more likely a nonprofit, a 501c3. So you are probably not going to get paid for that at all. You're not, honestly, you're kind of not there for it, right? And then you have kind of like the regional theater where sometimes like if you're doing a non-union show, sometimes you get paid, sometimes you don't. I've had a mixture of both. And then of course you get an equity card. So equity is basically the same as SAG, but for theater people. That's like the union for theater. That is where you get paid. But I've also auditioned for shows that they're like, you're making $675 a week. And I'm like, well, sounds good. But then you're like, that's $2,500 a month. And I live in Boston. You know, I got, for a lot of people, that's rent. You know what I'm saying? So it's a hustle. It's really a hustle. And that's just kind of the theater aspect of it. Going over to commercials more subjective. It depends on the shoot, depends on the client. The client would be like, who is the one that is producing this, like Nike or Puma, whoever. So that kind of can range. I've gotten auditions for as low as like $300. I've gotten auditions for as high as like $15,000 for like a week shoot. And I was like, $15,000 for a week, sign me up. Yeah. I didn't book those. So it can really depend. TV, I've had a few TV auditions for like guest star roles. Those don't necessarily pay as high, and a lot of times they don't kind of tell you what the role is, because there's like some non-union things that kind of go about it. So it all just kind of depends. But there isn't like a set rate a lot of times on who or how much you're going to get paid based off of like the project. It just kind of depends on what the project is. And I wish I booked one of those like $15,000 ones for like a 4-day shoot in like the mountains in Maine doing hiking and stuff. That would have been awesome. Alas, I did not get those.
What's the craziest or most memorable specific story you've had working so far?
All right. Yeah, I got a good one. I was hoping you would ask something like this. Going back to, because remember, I was on Challengers for 3 weeks. So when I was working on that, I got like this phone call from the casting director. And I was already on set working. And he was like, hey, I need you to like audition for something. Like, I need you to just like send photos in. You might have to do an audition. And I was like, cool, for what scene? He goes, I'm going to send you like some information about it. And so, do you remember the locker room scene?
Yeah.
Whereas like they're in the men's locker room? Yeah. That was probably going to be like, if I got it and it was available for it, where the dude shows everything. That was going to be potentially me. And I actually remember when I watched the movie, I remember sitting back and that scene happened and like the dude's like just came out, and I worked with him on set for like weeks. Like I know that person. And I was like, I wasn't expecting to know what that looks like. Okay, right, cool, right. And it was that specific scene. And I just remember I got fitted for it. I went and so in a fitting, you're basically, usually they happen before, like a day or two, like depending how big the production is before a shoot. So then you go in and you're kind of like in like the skivvies, and they're kind of like, well, how far down do you want to go to? Like, do you want to just show the full thing? And I was like, what does the role require? And they're like, that's up to you when you show up to set tomorrow. Okay, for now, maybe I'll just do my underwear, but because we had an intimacy coordinator too. So I was like, if they need me to get naked, I guess I'm going to get naked. But yeah, that was almost me. I ended up couldn't do it that day because I had interviews for another job that I was going to do. But yeah, that was probably going to be me, at least in the locker room, naked in that movie. So yeah.
Switching gears. If someone is, yeah. So if someone is watching this and wants to do what you're doing, right, and aspires to be an actor, what advice would you give them?
Oh, great question. So I think first thing you do is, if you have the opportunity, especially if you're like in high school or college, take the opportunity to try in class. There's no harm in it. You know what I'm saying? You're putting yourself out there, and you're gonna realize what you're able to do. You know, when you put yourself out there, it's actually an incredible experience. Take a class, just see how it is. It doesn't have to be acting. It could be theater, it could be improv, it could be singing. You know, I can't sing, so you probably won't see me most like on a Broadway show. But like doing that, like just trying and just having fun with it. And then number 2 is like, get comfortable. You don't have to love it or hate it, but like just get comfortable with rejection. Rejection is hard. I would consider myself at the right young age of 30 years old to be like a confident person. I'm happy with who I am, but yeah, rejection is hard. It can be going back to like what I was saying earlier about like, man, you really think you're cut for this role, and you hit all the marks, and you don't hear a single thing, you know. And it a lot of times, it's most of the time it's not you. It's really not. If you know you're putting in the effort for something, kind of like playing a sport, like a tennis match. I did everything that I could, and I still lost, but like I know that I did everything. That's okay. Move on. Get comfortable with rejection, and three, don't forget to have fun. Most people, you know, we professionalize a lot of stuff, and like it's just you're supposed to there to have fun. And when I was auditioning for drama school, I kind of forgot that. It was like you're dealing I was in a room auditioning with people who taught Lupita Nyong'o, who taught like, you know, like Meryl Streep went to Yale, you know what I'm saying? I was in a room auditioning to people who taught, you know, people like Jonathan Majors, and like people like I was like, what am I even doing here? You know, people who taught Moses Ingram. I'm like, why am I putting myself in these situations? I feel like an utter imposter. But at the same time, like if you just don't like put yourself in those situations, you don't really know what can happen. A lot of it is fighting imposter syndrome, but also just learning to have fun. Um, there's another quick brief story for you because I just think it's hilarious. When I went and auditioned for Yale, we had to do like an interview when we're done. So basically, when you do it, you do like 3 audition phases. So I did my first one, left. You have to like wait and see if your name is like written on the thing to come back for a second one. Somehow mine was, and I was like, this is weird. I went and did a second audition, and then they were like, okay, I'm gonna wait. Checked my name, it was written on the second one. I was like, what? Did my third one. I walk into a room, and they're just like, okay, sing for me. And I go, what? They're like, sing. And I go, all right, I guess I'm singing a song. So I sung Sweater Weather by The Neighborhood just off the top of my head. Like, I literally heard someone sing Itsy Bitsy Spider. So I was like, anything goes. I'm singing some, you know, alternative rock. Whatever. Let's go for it. Mainly because I felt like at that time, I was like, what song in my head can I hit? Like, I can kind of just carry a tune. And I was like, it's that one. And then I did my auditions. And then they sat me down for an interview. And the lady was looking at my resume, the head lady, and she kind of just looks at me and goes, you don't do this professionally, huh? And I go, was it that bad? And she goes, no, it was excellent. I'm just surprised you made it this far. And I was like, I don't know if that was a compliment or like an insult, but I'm going to take it as a compliment. But going back to, I literally signed the deadline. I think for that application was January 2nd, and I finished it January 1st. I had no intentions. I think I started it like December, like right after Christmas. And it's just a shot in the dark. I just literally threw it out there, went and auditioned, and I made it basically through that whole audition day. And most people leave after the first and second audition. So I made it through. And right before we did third round auditions, she was like, you made top 50. And I was like, of like what? She was like, of the over 1,200 applicants that applied for this cohort for the next 3 years, you made top 50. And I literally was standing there going like 1, 2. And I was like, she was like, yeah, that's less than like 5% of applicants already. And I was like, what? Like, that's crazy. So I'm basically saying that is, despite me not getting in, it's just, you just kind of have to throw yourself out there, and you'd be surprised at what kind of experiences you get.
Thanks for clocking in with us. Enjoyed the content? Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. If you have a career in mind you would like us to spotlight, send us a message on Instagram. We're always listening. Until next time, it's time to clock out.